rocket, so it's gonna go. All right. Wait, what's the? Forgot the other intro. What is it? Live from a McDonald's bathroom behind the Coca gun because the doors aren't open yet. It's the Sunday morning sumo show. I'm your host tonight, Goose. With me, as always, is JJ. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, man.
Below me is Rick, host of Kimboshi Sumo. Sometimes it's called Kimboshi Radio. I'm not sure what the deal is with there. How are you?
Doing great. Just ready to talk about a year of sumo.
Fantastic. And with me is the owner of maybe the worst named sumo show in the game, Bar and Grill, where we do nothing but math for some reason. But it is a pretty entertaining show nonetheless. How you doing, Spiffy?
It's not a show. It's a whole ass channel. Come on now.
My apologies.
I should
Fine.
do a show. I
What's?
should do a show where I just do math about sumo live.
I mean, that's what your Banzuke stuff is.
Just,
What's
yeah,
the,
not
what's
then.
the meaning
But then
behind that
everybody
name?
can watch me with all of the gaps in my speaking without edits, and no one can be entertained.
Just don't speed up the spread. Yeah, that would work fine. But happy to have you on. I thought it'd more the merrier for this little thing, because Lord knows everyone's tired of hearing JJ and I talk about Hirata Umi to death. So, welcome to the year in review. Got a bunch of topics. I will be keeping track of names mentioned to accidentally figure out a wrestler of the year, so keep your eyes out for that. Right out of the gate, Basho of the year. Which one was your favorite? Giving it to all of you for the most chaos I can muster.
Okay, let's do this. So, I do not think this is a popular opinion. I was talking to Goose before this. I threw a little poll up a couple days ago on our channel just because I was curious of what people thought was the most historic event. And Teru's 10th Basho got destroyed. No one thought it was important, but me alone, I guess. But that was Basho of the year for me in Nagoya. Simply because it felt so good those first 10 days, right? To have a Yokozuna back. Because that was not just the previous couple of Emperor's Cups Teru hoisted was a Yokozuna in name and rank. But when he came out of the gates there, he just destroyed everyone for their first week, and it felt so good. And then, not only did we have Yokozuna dominance, but by the end, we actually ended up having a race where Takanosho out of nowhere is in a playoff with Teru at the end. I think that's the boss show I had the most fun with. Oh, Goose does not approve.
No, that I was. You carry on. I'm in my own world.
No, that's all I got.
No,
so now
Rick, I feel like recency bias has made people forget about Teru's 10 and how big that was at the time. But
yeah.
I think it's more the fact that the
Yeah.
future's bright. Why worry about the past? Because how much of Teru do we see going forward?
If anything, do we get one Basho more, or does he just hang it up and say he went out? Seriously though.
January, do it. January, Teru, one more, do it.
If you check by
Every
his,
6 months,
his
just
stats,
let him fight every
it's
6
looking for an
months.
11-4
schedule.
Junyu show if he shows up in January.
Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and disagree.
Yeah.
I understand the logic. The problem for me is that the race happened because Teru's body imploded.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna give the title to that, it would be because he pulled it together and won the playoff, and credit to him for that. But Takano Show, he did great. It was an unbelievable performance, but it was almost anticlimactic because we've seen this happen to Teru before. It wasn't a choke. It wasn't a surprising breakdown. We all knew it was possible because we've all seen it happen. It was like, oh God, is he going to lose it because his body can only hold up for 13 days? And that's a little disappointing to me. I think they were all good. I think they were all entertaining in their own ways. I think I got to give it to March though, because Takeru Fuji was such a unique revelation. We don't see that. We don't see anything close to that. And obviously Makuuchi debut of the year is kind of a given now that I've said that, but we'll get to that.
Kind of why I put it in there.
Right.
Yeah, it's a goner. Yeah.
Right. That one was like, oh, I thought you might just want to start with that so we could have unanimity off the top. But okay, we don't have to. But like just that story and the sprained ankle and the fact that he could have theoretically lost it in that last day, but then he took Gonoyama and just threw him on his head was like, dude, that was theater. That was fantastic. So that's why I'm on March. But I'm not going to argue too hard about almost any of the other ones. I just like March the best.
Fair enough.
I'm a big
Go ahead,
fan
Goose.
of Kyushu. I think it
Mm.
was beautiful to watch two
was-
Ozeki in the lead the entire time. And then like a couple hanger-ons that eventually fell off, and then we're just going down to 14-1 has to be the result. That like the last 5 days of that Basho were just so exciting to be a part of, and it's like the future's bright as well, you know, because it's like, what are these dudes doing going forward now that our Ozekis can 14-1? That was the most fun I had traveling through a Basho.
I'm right there with you, Goose. I think Kyushu was probably my favorite too. Generally, I like the November tournament too because a lot of those guys are fighting hard to get a good rank come the start of the new year. Um, so there's always a little bit of extra spice in November, but having the two Ozeki go toe to toe like that on the last day was, I mean, it's what I want as a sumo fan.
As
I'm
much
gonna-
fun as the
Yeah.
Terunofuji dominations can be, the race is more exciting to me.
This is my only little bit of pushback on Kyushu is that it was Koto and Hoshoryu, and we have been waiting for them to do this for so long.
True.
And they just happened to both pull it together at the same time, and that did make for great theater. But if it had been like Ono Sato in one of them, not because it was Ono Sato, but just because it would be the one who's supposed to come through and steamroll, and then the one who's been trying to live up to expectations, whichever one of them it was, going toe to toe in the end, I think that would have been even better. The fact that we were looking at two guys who have done really, really well consistently, but not gone to the level that's been expected of them. And I don't know if we can really expect it to happen in January, even though I think we're all hoping for it from at least one of them.
Yeah.
That's why I got it second for that reason. But it's worthy for sure.
That's fair, man.
No, those are really good points for sure. I think the reason why it gets that edge for me is because those guys are starting to live up to that extra that sort of expectations that we have of them. But no, that's totally a fair point.
Or even it just makes me think like because we finally got it from both of them and because we have no idea when we're ever going to get it from both of them again, does it get extra points for that?
It's fair.
Scores are kind of interesting so far. We're going to keep going on. I didn't explain myself well enough because I feel like Yusho and Basho of the year would have been a little more different. Mostly because my Yusho of the year is the Spiffy's Basho of the year. Yusho of the year, the single win itself, not the whole ordeal. I got to give it to Takara Fuji for exactly the
Hell
same
yeah.
reasons you did.
Yep.
Coming back on day 15 on a broken ankle, and he didn't actually have to be there because Ono Sato lost anyway. He really could have picked the couch Yusho. It's like Wakano Hana said, like, you know, a samurai has returned. The spirit you have to do to be able to pull that off. The absolute upset of like it's his debut. He shouldn't be beating these guys. Just the most exciting day 15 I've ever seen.
Just to play devil's advocate, are we at all like I don't know, like did he beat a weak slate? So like he beat Kotonowaka before the name change, and he did beat Wakamoto Haru when I believe it was Haru was Komusubi at the time. Had he lost Sekiwake but not lost Sanya? I don't remember exactly. I'll have to look it up. But he did lose to Hoshoryu and lose to Asanoyama. Again, like I said, I'm just picking it. Like a lot of his wins came Dayamami, Endo, Roga, Myogiru. Like,
There was a
I don't know.
Jurio one in there. which is why I don't give it Basho of the year. But that being said, um, like him beating Kota Nowaka was like, wait, wait a second, this
Yeah.
is this is about to be magical.
It's worth noting, him and Onosato were both smashing everybody in that tournament. And
Yeah.
like, as somebody who has been like playing an actual game based around the schedule for a while now, I had
Mhm.
more reason to look at this stuff than most people. They actually got pushed into high ranking matchups faster than it ever happens normally. Usually that doesn't happen, even for guys who are 8-0. That doesn't usually happen until at least day 10, maybe 11. That started for them on day 9. Takeru Fuji fought Abi, who was Komusubi at the time, on day 9. Like that got scheduled before he even had the 8-0 locked up. That's how dominant he was. So,
Pretty impressive.
in theory, for a guy who was Maegashira 17, I think you could definitely look at the schedule and expect to say, yeah, but it was kind of a weak slate. It was the strongest slate of opponents they could have given a guy at that rank. It is literally the strongest. They could not have done more to test him. So I think he did everything he could to prove that it was worthy.
Yeah, he had a Komusubi's last 7 days. It was pretty impressive.
Really fair
JJ?
points. No, really, really fair point. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Just the story alone of coming back on the last day, that really makes it for me as Yusho of the or Basho.
The
Yusho, whatever.
samurai has returned.
That shit is just so hype. Like even as a general sports fan, you can't like hear that and not go, "Oh, cool."
And like he also had with the couch show, if he hadn't fought and Onosato had won, he would have lost by default because he wouldn't have been allowed to come back for the playoff. So he could have just given very little effort against Gonoyama, hoped Onosato lost, and then saved his effort for Onosato. But he didn't. He went out there and he made it happen right away, which was definitely the smarter move because Gonoyama was going to be the easier opponent. But it was also indicative of that mindset, which is just, again, total theater. Excellent theater.
Yep. It's probably the strongest of the storylines that we got to see this year.
I think so, and I think throughout the Basho as well. So to Goose's point, or I don't know, actually, that this maybe even pushes it towards Basho. Although I guess Basho of the year, the idea being were there more storylines in a different tournament as opposed to this singular one. Yeah, well, I think no, you're good. Well, because like again, like Nagoya is interesting because we also had like the Wakataka Kage return. That's another story. This idea of a Takanosho bounce back. That was another story. Actually, Takakeisho losing Ozeki was a story in that Basho as well. Like there were a ton of stories in that one. Is kind of where I grew. But like, agreed. I don't know that for a singular performance, anything can beat Takeru Fuji in 2024.
So is that 3 more votes for Takeru Fuji?
Yeah.
Yep.
He's about to clean house, man. There's some more categories that he's got
4 on
locked
the
up.
way too for the next one. So hang on, did everyone have Yusho of the year as Takeru Fuji?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sounds
How do you
like
have
it.
Yusho and Basho of the year, Spiffy?
Yep. I have it listed as probably March. Makuuchi debut of the year, which I assume we're doing next. Guess where I went?
All right, so okay, our next category, Makuuchi debut of the year. All right,
Well, Goose, I'm gonna go out on a limb here.
Tasty.
Shishi? No. Excuse me, sir. Asakoryu. Let's fight about it. 2 losing records. Let's go.
like what can we say that we haven't said already? Showed up,
For sure.
cleaned up, went home, came back, and still did pretty all right. On a significant
and-
injury. A lot of sumo was done on the feet, from what I've been able to see. So
I think what's also interesting with the Takeru Fuji one, so not just that this was his Makuuchi debut, but I mean, I'm just trying to say more stuff that we haven't already said. But like in January, that's his Jurio debut, and from Jurio 10, he goes 13-2 and wins and gets an automatic immediate promotion up. Which we've seen a lot of guys this year go 13-2 from Jurio and get kind of roadblocked. You know, there's reasons for that and stuff like that. But the way he just blitzed through this entire year, so 13-2 in his Jurio debut makes it to Makuuchi, where he goes 13-2 and wins the Makuuchi Yusho, first one in 110 years. Then he's out, right? He's out and misses a tournament, and then the next tournament came back for whatever it was, 2 wins just to stay in Jurio. But then in September he comes back, goes 13-2, wins Jurio again. And even though he disappointed me a little bit, not in a bad way at the end, like the 10-5, but just like if I'm just expanding this to just debuts in general, and the man is just annihilating.
Those are high expectations for a disappointment, just quietly. He also got 4 Yusho this year.
That's crazy.
Oh,
3.
3?
Three, because he didn't.
Am I a clown?
Yeah, well, because his Makushita one
Oh no, he
goes
would
back
have
to
got 4 Yusho. I'm
2023.
a clown. That's right. In my mind, he just Yusho'd anyway. The narrative's still there. The Undertaker is
He
real.
got
Yeah,
3. He got 3 in 4 tournaments.
That's
It's insane.
ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
And again, like talking about average win totals, like if you toss out his 2 lost Basho, like that's madness. Like the pace he was on is absurd.
And what's crazy is like, I didn't take this into consideration thinking about Basho of the Year, Yusho of the Year, whatever. But in retrospect, what if the injuries that he suffered, because there was the ankle in the tournament and then there was the chest injury in practice while recovering, those looked like they were basically okay, but maybe not completely. It's a little hard to tell if people started to figure him out or if he wasn't 100%. What if just the state of his body ends up keeping him from reaching the top level that it looked like he was on a rocket ship towards in the long run? Like that Yusho of his is going to be even more legendary in a not a bad way, but in an unfortunate way.
Infamous. Right.
Yes.
Infamous rather than I mean, like this is nobody knows anything about this, myself included, besides what I've read on Wikipedia articles, but like Ryogoku, right? Like the guy whose record he beat, Ryogoku's a nobody. Ryogoku the second. Ryogoku the first is important. But he won that debut Yusho, never won again, never really contended for anything ever again. So in that regard, Takeru Fuji looks better than that, but to me that anxiety is still there, Spiffy. I'm with you.
I have a bit of inside information.
Especially the chest injury, because
And by that, I mean wild speculation. So on Takeru Fuji's Wikipedia page, it says he has the 230 kilo bench press, which is why his Yorikiri is so ridiculous, because he can push back more than the total weight of his wrestlers. But Teruno Fuji has said to stop doing that and to focus on your lower body more for a more rounded sumo game. Spiffy, you're the expert. Did you notice his Yorikiri looked a little weaker the second time around?
Are you talking about? So, if we were trying to relate his bench press to his sumo, I would expect that to relate to his Oshi game, not his belt game.
This kind of position, though, you're in Yorikiri. Just this general kind of motion, basically, even when close, can be pretty strong. Point is, he's focusing on his lower body more than his upper body, is what one line in a Wikipedia article has told me. Have you noticed his Oshi Yorikiri game in general looked weaker the second time around?
No. In fact,
not at all. All right,
when he
lost,
when he lost to Toki Hayate, that was an issue. Toki got inside, and he it looked like he was shocked by it. So that was his first loss in 5 matches at Toki Hayate. So it looked like he kind of figured he would blow him out, and then when it didn't happen, he's like, "Oh shit, what's happening? Oh, I lost." So that happens. Shonen Umi, he went after him. Shonen Umi is very good defensively and beat him at the last second with a slap down. That happens. And then after that, he fought, his losses were to Gonoyama, who was actually not sucking ass this time, Onosato, who's Onosato, and Abi, like the best version of Abi. So, yeah, he looked basically fine. It looked more like he just had to reacclimate himself to the level. And the level where now there's guys who have a lot more tape on him and a lot more of an ability to form a game plan for how to face him.
Right.
But I think he's going to be fine as long as his body is okay. That being said, as long as he just does enough upper body work to maintain that level of strength where he's at, he doesn't need to be able to bench press more than 500 pounds. He can stay at that level. He'll be fine. But get them squats going, man. Get some calf raises going. Yeah. So one thing that I heard other than lower body work was like more like flexibility training, which is obviously never a bad thing. But it's really, if they're focusing on lower body strength, that's, yeah. Because the ability to resist, to like drop into a squat and resist, would be the last piece of the puzzle for him.
Right.
In just never losing again.
So yes,
Or does he go the obby route and just hope for lateral movement at the edge? Like,
oh god,
the Olay, as we call it.
He's better than Obby. He can be so much better than Obby. Please don't wish that shit on him. And I like Obby.
Obby's cool. What do you mean? All right. So there's our Takeru Fuji hour. I'm not gonna. Oh, JJ.
Yeah, I just wanted to, since we all are in agreement about Takeru Fuji taking like the most impressive debut, of the other guys that we got to see debut, are there any that stand out to you guys? Are there any that you're paying attention to or are going to pay attention to? I know I'm paying attention to Onokatsu for sure.
Can they stand out because they were terrible?
Sure,
Shishi?
yeah, for sure.
Because that was my joke.
Yeah. Yes. Oh god, that was so bad.
That's exactly what I expected, though. I don't know what you mean.
Yeah,
Shishi's
same.
the most overhyped wrestler I've ever seen.
Shishi was the most D tier level guy to walk into the division, and he didn't disappoint.
The most impressive thing Shishi did for me all year is in, I guess it was September, right? When basically they had a loser goes home match. Kimbo Zan fought Shishi. And really, the JSA put that match together not for Shishi. They put it together for Kimbo Zan, I think. They were trying to motivate him and be like, hey, hold on to your spot.
Yeah.
And then Shishi stole his lunch money. So then Shishi sneaks on in.
Goodness gracious. All right. Match of the year.
Real quick,
Yep.
let's just say something positive about somebody else. Oshoma finally figured out how to do sumo to the level he's capable of. And now, obviously, Maegashira 4 is a level he's not capable of. But he, like, walked into the division and immediately showed he could stay there. And that was, like, good to see. He might be an ass. So I'm not saying I'm rooting for him. But he definitely walked in and showed why a lot of people had hopes for him a few years ago and expected him to get to this level before this.
And just like to say the like part that some people might be thinking, just to say it out loud, like we know Onosato debuted this year as well. It just he didn't do what Takeda Fuji did.
Easy to get caught in the whatever the phrase is, I forget. Easy to get lost in the mix there.
Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah.
Match of the year. Your individual match of the year out of all 90 days.
Oh man, I'm jumping in for this because okay, not to go back to Takeru Fuji again, but actually Hoshoryu versus Takeru Fuji on day, so what was that? That's day 12, right? Because Hoshoryu beats Takeru Fuji when Takeru Fuji, that would have been the record for he had already tied the record. 11 straight wins in your debut is the record. If he gets that 12th win, he stands outright in a record. So the records Takeru Fuji holds are shared records. This would have been one that he had on his own. And the fact that, like, we were talking before when we were talking about Kyushu and finally seeing both Kotozakura and Hoshoryu step up, like, we don't always see Hoshoryu step up the way we wanted. And to me, that was a match that, like, had so much tension and so much hype behind it. And everybody in the sumo community was so excited to see that fight because of Takeru Fuji. They were not excited to see it for Hoshoryu. He was purely a foil to Takeru Fuji. And then those are the moments that I love from Hoshoryu when he stands up and says, "Oh, y'all forgot about me? Oh, no." And just, like, throws a boy down.
Motivated Hoshoryu is a beautiful thing. The problem is he gets comfortable and forgets about that.
I'm I'm gonna go with a different Hoshoryu fight, actually. Him and Hiraumi in May was like, I'm sure there were probably ones that I would have found just as good, and I just couldn't find them going back through a year's worth of footage. But I saw that one, and that one was an absolute freaking barn burner. Like they were going at it
Mm.
full throttle, and it was the kind of match that if most matches were like that, the JSA wouldn't be able to ignore the international fan base because everybody would just be all over this sport. On just a personal interest level, I thought the playoff between Teruno Fuji and Takano Sho was hype as hell. Because even though the match didn't go very long, watching Takano Sho, he had just beaten Teru. He knew he was fighting just a wounded king, and was like, I can't let this go. I can't let this go. And he's trying to hang on at the end. Meanwhile, Teru has got to be in levels of pain that we cannot understand while he's like lifting this 400-pound dude and trying to get him those last couple inches out of the ring. It's just like, oh my God, this is going to happen. Oh my God. Ah. So just for the moment, honestly, the Hoshoryu and Takeru Fuji, I get it. The thing that makes it a little less of a big deal to me is that it was more like Hoshoryu did the same thing to Onosato. Like these guys who haven't been there just run in and get flipped on their faces. That's just what happened. And then they figure out not to do that the next time. Or the time after that, eventually, like Onosato eventually figured it out. Atami Fuji has figured it out. So that is just kind of Hoshoryu doing Hoshoryu things. We've seen that before. But yeah, to me, like Teru and Takano Sho was, it was so huge to both guys, and that's rare.
Yeah, there's the real upset kind of moments in the tournament where it's like, hang on, the race is different now. Like the momentum got stopped, or like this guy's about to start going. Those are always beautiful kind of moments. And Hoshoryu ending the 11 in a row is kind of a really good example of that. JJ?
I got a couple. None really is like grand or important. Two of them are involving Hirorumi. I can't remember which of the tournaments it is, whether it's July or May, but when he was fighting against Daisho, and they had that absolutely crazy, as Clayton would say, threshing match, where they're just full bore, all Oshi, smacking the shit out of each other. That was intense. The other one is the double Torinaoshi with Ura, just for the novelty of that alone. And then my favorite, just as like because I like the guy, is Ichi Yamamoto's match against Kitano Waka, where he tried to pull him down like 7 times while circling around the entire length of the dohyo. Yeah, just as like a Ichi fan, that was great.
I'm telling you, hot take, the Olay is the most exciting move in sumo, especially when it doesn't work.
I remember losing my mind when I saw that 6 failed slap down attempts in a row while moving backwards 5 meters. Let's go for a 7th. Oh, I got pushed out. Just comedy gold.
Oh, that's great.
The Torino Oshi as well, like, the Ura moment is completely indescribable, yet instantly recognizable. And Ura hitting a Psycho Crusher in order to try and win a match, only to draw anyway and have to come back for a 3rd one after landing on hard clay hip first, which we saw what happened to Bataka Yume. Just, Ura is so fascinating. Like, out of everyone, even my personal favorite wrestlers, when he retires, that one's gonna hurt the most. Because he's truly irreplaceable.
Yeah. There might be another Rikishi in the future who is as unique as Ura, but it won't be in the ways Ura is unique. Like the banana stuff that happens.
him running to the wrong side of the dojo, stuff like that. I could go on. Anyway, my personal favorite match was Kirishima versus Hoshoryu. And I would like to point out
The baby lift.
I would like to point out I'm the first person to mention Kirishima. Maybe the only person. Because that match was significant to me because, like, aside from watching Hoshoryu really level up with his best performance yet, almost getting a 14-1, those guys are so evenly matched in their head-to-head, and they've both been Ozeki. Like, they're absolutely elite, top-level guys. And to get beaten in such an embarrassing way like that really gives me hope for the future. Not for Kirishima, I think it's over for him. But for our Ozeki, it's like watching that was like 2025 is going to be very competitive if this is the kind of stuff that can happen now. Give me Kirishima's one and only point. Nothing else sticks out.
Man. No, I'm just sad because you brought up Kirishima and just like
My
where
bad.
we were in November 2023 with Kirishima and where we are after November 2024. I could never have guessed that that's what would happen. And it's not even bad. Like he's still in the upper Maegashira, like, but just like for real, man. He had a Yokozuna resume. I'm not saying many people thought he was going to get there, but like he was building a Yokozuna resume in November 2023.
He's going to be one of the 2020's biggest injury questions.
Yep.
Because, like, getting hurt absolutely sideswiped him. And the fact that he was Ozeki, he's like, I can't just let this go. So he didn't give himself any time to recover, even though he was at the rank where he would lose the least if he
Right.
took that time.
Yeah.
And yeah. So that is super interesting just about Ozeki in general, how like at Yokozuna you get the reprieve, but Ozeki's almost I know you get a tournament at Kadoban or whatever, but in this case that didn't matter, but like the curse of Ozeki, it reminds me, it's an old video now or whatever, but the Sumo Stew video about Ozeki the loneliest rank. Like it's super interesting, that idea of you have to keep coming back. Like you can't lose Ozeki, or it's why we celebrate the Tochinoshin story of getting it back, you know, like I don't know.
It's the problem I have with like the kind of general perception of sumo fans is that an Ozeki is a failed Yokozuna, which is like the pressure that they really don't need. There's a lot of people that think like that. I'm not saying I do at all, but it's like, yeah, this guy's a bad Ozeki. He can't even put 2 wins together. That's not what Ozeki are. That's what Yokozuna are. Like,
Does that get applied generally or just to like certain guys though? Because there are guys who are like, holy crap, he got an Ozeki. Like, did anybody really think Mataki Yumi was Yokozuna material? The fact he got to Ozeki was impressive as hell. But Takakeisho looked like Yokozuna material, so it was disappointing he didn't get there.
that one fills my heart with sadness, dude. That was like the first full 15 days I saw, and it's like, oh, this is the guy forever. Anyway. Alright. And now this one's going to be the most confusing, because I feel like the three of us don't really understand why these prizes are given in the first place. There's 4 of us. I don't know why I said 3.
I don't know. I was going to ask, which one of us does understand?
Yeah, I was looking around the room, and I'm like, I guess it's JJ? I don't know.
Apparently, I don't understand
Bro, look at
anything.
his empty ass face. I don't know shit.
Look, fair point. Fighting Spirit Prize. For the whole year in review, who gets the Fighting Spirit Prize? JJ.
Oh God. I think. Shit.
Rick.
Give me a second.
Yeah. All right. I can hop in, but I was hoping to go at the end because I think I'm like a full left field pick, but like I gave it to Chura no Umi. One, because I love yeah. Hear me out. One, I'm biased. I love the Okinawa boys. But 2, the thing is those back-to-back 10-win bashos from Chura no Umi that was perhaps the most like out of left field performance for me of anyone, right? So when I think of fighting spirit, it's like the technical criteria for this is so weird. It's just like whoever had the most impressive performance relative to their rank. And those two tournaments alone were so wild to me that Chernoumi of all people did, and he got smacked back down by the end, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought we were gonna see. But when you look at the entire year for him, Chernoumi had 46 wins on the year, so he's tied for 11th, right? So if he had gotten one more win, he's actually in the top 10 there. And so this guy who, in my opinion, is like a rank and filer, is like a nobody. That's who wins Kanto Show. That's who wins Fighting Spirit Prize. Is when a rank and filer gets in there and does something insane. And like looking at that overall year and that highlight of stringing together two stellar boss shows, I'm like, it's Juro no Umi.
That you kind of make a good point, actually. I was ready to be angry with you, but you kind of make a good point.
I bring him around like Obby circling the dojo.
JJ, you got anything yet?
The one that came to mind was going to be, turns out was 2023. So it was November 2023. So I can't use that one.
Look, we didn't do it 2023. You want to just like sneak that in real quick?
You guys got an extra 10 minutes at the end?
Nah, but I'll give the fighting spirit for that Onosato had on his debut when he went 11-4. He got the Gino show and the Kanto show. Oh no, that was just the Kanto show. Yeah, so that was his first appearance in top division. I hadn't really been paying attention to him in Juryo, so it was like my first time getting to see him, and yeah, it was really exciting. So yeah, start of the year, I'll give it right to Onosato for that one.
So the year in review award goes for one Basho.
Yep.
All right, Spiffy.
But it was a good boss show.
All right.
Because
So
it was
then-
also debut, and I like debuts.
All right.
And we've already talked about Takeru Fuji enough.
All right. So this might surprise you, but I applied math and science to this. So, fighting spirit, I figure it is going to cover one of two things. One is simply winning, and the other is really getting out there and going balls to the wall 100% every day. So if you look at wins, and this is for anybody that did not reach Ozeki at any point during the year, the person who got the most wins was Abi. As far as I could tell, he had 51. Then you got Wakamoto Haru and Daisho each had 50. And I think those are all reasonable picks. But that's, like, they seem a little too easy. And I kind of wanted to hit that, that fighting spirit aspect. And if you flip it to the other side, where it's purely who's going all out all the time, regardless of the circumstances, honestly, Shura no Umi did not occur to me, but I think he's a reasonable pick for that. I was a little disappointed that he had an 11-4 record in his hands, and all he had to do was beat Kageyaki, and he didn't do it. So that's kind of meh. But if you look at it completely disregarding record, I actually like Sada no Umi because he never ever goes less than 100%. He's like Kotoeko was. He's like 20 kilos below the average weight in the division, and he's constantly just trying to blast dudes and yoink dudes and throw dudes like any way he can. So I'm like, all right, who splits that? Who's the best middle ground between those two ideas? So I landed on Tobizaru.
Ooh.
Because Tobizaru never quits. Tobizaru never takes a match off. But Tobizaru is also always at the top of Maegashira. He's one of only two guys who was in the Joy, who was at the top of Maegashira the whole year. It was him and Atami Fuji. That was it. Toby had 46, so he went 44 and 46 for the year. Atami went 43 and 47. So they had almost identical overall records. Toby had 20 of his losses to the Sanyaku, and 9 of his wins were against them. Atami fought the Sanyaku more because he was higher rank. So 30 of his losses were to the Sanyaku, and 13 of his wins were. And I figure how hard you go against the Sanyaku is meaningful, but Toby never had a match where it was like he screwed it up. And Atami, every single tournament, there was one match, at least, usually one match, where it's like his brain fell out of his head, he forgot what he was doing, and he just loses for no good reason at all. And that's not what we're looking for here. Like, just walking past Mitakeumi, overstepping against Hoshoryu when you have him beat, no. Sorry, dude. You don't count for this. So I thought about Ura because he was in that vicinity, but he wasn't quite in the Joy the whole year, even though he was in the same ranks. Like, what makes up the top 16 is different a little bit each tournament, and Tobizaru was actually there. So I kind of left Ura out on that. So yeah, I landed on Tobizaru. High-ranking opposition, brought it every day. Pretty much all of his losses, you're like, yeah, I don't know how he was going to win that. And I don't know what more you can ask for.
That's a lot of good points at once.
Yeah.
I feel you a lot on Tobizaru being in the Joy. I get
Right.
the feeling he's going to retire a 14-time Komusubi without ever making Sekiwake. Like, he will just bounce in and out of there. No, those are all really interesting points. I'd like to listen to that back, actually, to have a better understanding of sumo. Is also a pretty strong contender. My vote for Fighting Spirit, and I'm glad we all approach this differently, is Wakatake Kage doing triple in top division, double digits in a row, and then one in Juryo on a broken knee. Dude came back from a career ender and is right back in the Sanyaku 1 year after coming back. That is an outstanding performance on an injured body. The amount of dudes that have never made it back to that level. Asano Yama took a little longer to get back into the Sanyaku. He had some other injuries in the meantime, though. The body does fall apart. Some people have just never come back from it. So for me, to adjust his style and to work around that is the fighting spirit, kind of like, I can do this, I can keep dominating kind of style, and that's where I get my point to.
It's an interesting point because I don't think he really changed his style either. He still seems to be pivoting on the knee he blew up, which is interesting.
It's not wrapped
he's
either,
not,
which
as in he's
terrifies
not
me.
scared of it, dude. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Waka's an interesting choice, especially I'm a sucker. The only thing like Spiffy was, or like you were talking about with Waka versus the Tobizaru, is it like bugs me that he never got a double digit win tournament. Like, he did have 2 9 and 6s, I think, which is awesome. But I can't really discount that because, like you said, they were all in the Joy. So like, it's hard to get 10 wins up there. But then, like, to Goose's point, I get dazzled by those double digit bashos for Waka.
They mean something. I don't know what, but they mean something. That's why I appreciate
Honestly-
talking to Spiffy about sumo. I'm all vibes, he's all math.
Honestly, I'm good with Waka. The only reason I didn't consider him was because I only looked at guys who were in the top division the whole year.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, fair.
That was
Because
it.
if you're gonna get a year long, yeah.
Yeah, that was the only reason I didn't think of. Like, I specifically left him out for that reason. But yeah, like, the way he's come back better than he was before, and it's not like he's surprising, so okay, quote unquote better. No, he's fighting better than he was before he got hurt. Like, that's not even a question. He's just being, it's like getting hurt and recovering. And by the way, the amount of time it's been since the injury should be about where it's near the point where it should be fully healed, but it's not quite to the point where we should expect absolute full athletic ability from him. So the fact that he's doing this, it looks like taking that time and having to readjust to his body the way it is now is like he actually figured out a better type of sumo for himself.
And to emphasize your point, Spiffy, like you're saying, right now is when he's supposed to be fully healed from that. My man came back to sumo like a year ago. We had on Kimboshi Radio, we had my buddy Phil, who does PT for people who've had reconstructive surgeries and stuff like that, and he was talking the whole time. He's like, Waka shouldn't be back. Like, this is not, he should not be competing on this knee. Any doctor would tell him not to do this. And yet, to Spiffy's point, there he is.
The technique prize. I'm also interested how we all interpreted this differently.
I
JJ.
definitely misunderstood the assignment. So,
Oh, I got to hear this.
so technique prizes. Whether a wrestler is showing a single technique finely tuned to a degree that is their style, or a large degree of things, a large degree of techniques. Those are like the two kind of schools of thought. I think I'm gonna have to go with Hirodoumi for focusing on such an explosive Oshi style and doing quite well as a smaller guy. I mean that 9-6, 9-6, 10-5 debut at Komusubi, I think that was just like the hypest shit ever. So I'm definitely gonna go with like the finely hued Oshi style from a smaller guy. I love that.
It's a fair point. I have to agree with you. I also had Hirota Umi. My understanding was the application of technique. I don't think anyone has a better tachi than Hirota Umi. And when he wins, he looks like he's trying to kill you. The way the strength that he can apply that with. Singular-minded, kind of like Takakeisho, very focused, but very excellent in that execution. And that's what gives me the technique prize to Hirota Umi. Spiffy.
So I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree that he's impressive, but the last two tournaments, we've also seen what happens if a body like that starts to fade even a little.
True.
If we're going to talk about just variety of techniques, like you just lock in Midori Fuji and call it a day.
Right.
But that's too easy. So I figured, well, if there's one guy who does a bunch of different stuff and like two other guys, Ura and Tobizaru, who will do other stuff as necessary, but it just sort of depends. Why don't we just go 100% troll pick and say Abi? Because Abi only does one thing,
Yep.
and he's intent on perfecting it to a degree that no one has ever seen before. It's not even like perfect Oshi style, because Oshi can be a lot of things. Pushing can be
It's
a
only
lot of
Tsupati,
things.
yes.
Belt work can be a lot of things. No.
Yes.
He's going to force choke you,
Yep.
Homer Simpson
or he's
sumo,
going to
why
yank you
live?
down on your face. That is it. That is all he has. In fact, the fact that he actually hit Onosato with a legitimately good throw, by this standard, actually takes away from his technique prize. But you know what? Not enough for me not to give it to him. And like I said, I'm only counting those who were for these prizes, didn't hit Ozeki, and was in the top division the whole year. So if we're gonna count guys who were not in the top division the whole year, why don't we give it to Chiyoshoma? Let's go there. Like, hey, the king of the Henkas, Henka is a technique.
Yeah.
Fight me.
Yeah.
All right, count it
Who
up.
was it?
Chiyoshouma's
Someone
one
in-
and only point.
Yes. Who was it in Nagoya? Someone tried to hank at Chiyoshoma, and you could see on his face, like, really? Me?
I felt like that one was somebody wanted a double Henka because it never happens, and they're just like, let's see if we can make it go this time.
He was on like 11 losses
then-
at the time too. It was insane. I've never seen such a dead man get kicked before.
Oh, dude, I am absolutely fascinated by your Abi argument, though. I love the reinterpretation of the technique prize to not be about diversity but perfection. Oh man, I got so much. I want to chew on that for a long time because that is a fascinating. I love that. The JSA will never consider it, but I love it. I perhaps took the most boring route possible and simply looked at the fact that Ono Sato won 3 technique prizes and was like, yeah, give it to him. But to justify it, like, it's actually the opposite, I think, of the case Spiffy made about Abi that I love so much. But what I like about Ono Sato in the dohyo is how he dares in Itachi and just the beginning of the match, even if someone doesn't want to clash hard with him, he opens his body up and just dares his opponent to hit. He's like, just hit me, and then I'll figure out how I'm gonna beat you. And that's, to me, what speaks to his strength in technique, is this idea of like, I'm not even gonna bother with strategy. You hit me with something, and I'm gonna on the fly figure out the best way to beat you. Now, most of the time, is that the same way? Yeah, he's just gonna overpower you. But that idea that he doesn't care what you're doing to him and he's going to figure out how to beat you after the fact is really impressive to me.
Respectable. Probably the only time you will ally with the JSA, but I'll allow it.
So I actually looked at the first thing I did was look at who won the technique prizes, and I saw Ono Sato won 3 of them, and then I looked at the ways he won.
Yeah.
And I saw that there was listed Kimarite. There was a bunch of different ones. But if you watch the matches, he does 2 different things, depending. And that's pretty much it. So I'm like, that's part of why I didn't mind going with Abi, because if the JSA is going to take the technique prize and just treat it as like a backup award to give to somebody when they need a second prize for something, I'm just like, you know what? That's more troll than anybody I could pick. So I felt very justified.
I'm glad none of us could come to an agreement on this. I like how confusing these are.
Yeah.
So, as far as the Sunday morning sumo show side of things is concerned, the technique prize is actually just the Oshidashi prize. And we'll figure it out from there. Outstanding performance for the whole year. Rick, who do you give it to?
This one is related to... Clearly, I loved the Nagoya Basho, but I gave it to Takanosho. And, okay, so Takanosho, one, I love this guy. Everybody loves the smile, right? And, I don't know, he's like a tragedy, right? He's the clown who keeps smiling despite his career. If you think back, Spiffy, I think it was you who brought up, like, the Mitakeyumi Ozeki run, right? Like, that came late in his career, but Takanosho, there was this moment, I think it's at the end of 2022, right, where Mitakeyumi and Takanosho are both Sekiwake, and the talk is like, oh, they're still in their prime, they're still 28, 29, this is when they're both going to make the Ozeki run, and Mitakeyumi did, and Takanosho plummets down. So, like, he's sort of this tragic figure in sumo to me, but then, for outstanding performance, twice this year, he beats Teru, and I know in one of them, he wasn't vintage Teru, but still, like, beating the Yokozuna matters. And even that playoff loss, the fact that he's in contention, to go back to the same similar case that I made with Truro Naomi, Takanosho was 6th highest in win total this year, and the guys he's behind are Kotozakura, Onosato, Hoshoryu, Daisho, and Abi. So, like, those are dudes who were Sanyaku almost all year. Abi lost it at one point, Daisho lost it at one point, but, like, those are Sanyaku guys who are the guys who are racking up more wins than him. And Takanosho is up there in that conversation, which is really impressive to me. And then I think, I think he's actually was tied for 5th with Daisho in there, whatever. But that's kind of what impressed me, is that twice this year he was in Yusho contention. One more so than the other, right? That, remember, he was 10-1 in our most recent Basho as well. So, like, he had these times where he was in contention, didn't get it done. So I know that's not normally who wins outstanding performance, but if I was looking at it over a year and a resume built over 12 months, that's who really impressed me.
Respectable. Spiffy.
I'm down with Takanosho. I think that's a good pick, but that's not who I went with. I actually went with numbers just to start my thinking, and then the numbers just dictated it on their own. So, outstanding performance is supposed to be, in many ways, dictated by who beats the Yokozuna or who beats the tournament winner. So, Teruno Fuji only had 2 legit tournaments this year, so I threw the Ozeki into the mix as well. So, who had the most wins against Teru in January or July, not the 2 where he fell apart immediately, against anyone who was Ozeki at the time, and against, and I threw in tournament winners too at the end. And Abi destroyed everyone by that metric. He had 6 wins against Yokozuna or Ozeki and another one against the tournament winner. The most anyone else had was 4. And that was Ura, Onosato, and Oho, unbelievably. So I give it to Abi just because the way that OP is defined, he just wrecked everyone's face, and I don't see an argument to give it to anyone else on that basis.
I love this so much. I need to clip this. My co-host Nick, the first tournament he ever watched, he's like, I like this Abi guy. He's the dream crusher. and it is true.
Yeah.
He's the dream crusher.
I'm so confused. Everyone's hyping up Abi, and I guess I just didn't see it this year. Maybe that 5-10 spoiled me. I don't know what happened. When you're making like, how did he get most wins off 5-10? 11-4 at the end kind of makes things a little sweeter. But fair enough,
I mean, that was
guess.
his only losing record. That helps.
All right, so 5 to yeah, all right. No, the math makes sense, but spiritually, I hate it. So count up Abi's first point. Surprisingly, I'm gonna have to give outstanding performance to, and I thought this was obvious, but apparently not, Ono Sato for showing up for less than 2 years, picking up 2 Yushos, as much as his Yokozuna coach, picking up 13 twos, and dominating some of these top guys that he should not be competitive with just yet. Went positive for the entire year as well, which I feel like should be a qualifying factor, but apparently not. It's just, he excited consistently and had his worst score of 9-6, one above Kachikoshi as an Ozeki. That's a pretty impressive performance for a full year, if you ask me. So I got to give my point to him. Any objections?
I'm
So
not gonna fight you on it.
not going to fight you on it. The reason, like, I specifically didn't include him because to me, like, he hit Ozeki at the end, and also, and this is the main thing.
Ozeki
he
disqualify.
Well, even if you just look at the ones where he wasn't an Ozeki, which was 5 of them, so that's plenty. This is a guy who was basically an Ozeki who just hadn't reached the rank yet. Like, he was steamrolling so hard that it felt too easy. I wanted to give it to somebody who was clearly not an Ozeki level wrestler. If he had been, like, not really looking like an Ozeki level wrestler and then this year popped off, that would be different. But all he did was do what I think most people expected of him. So, yeah, I decided to just leave him out, and then that gave me Abi.
No, that makes sense. I guess I thought that outstanding performance meant something else. I forget the official JSA definition. To me, it's the who did the best award. And because Teru
JSA doesn't
wasn't
stick to their
here for
definitions.
3/4 of it, Onosato did the best. JJ, back me up.
No.
Fuck.
I'm gonna go with a pick that Spiffy mentioned. For me, the way that I'm gonna justify this is like a dude who before he started doing stuff I didn't pay attention to and I didn't care about, and then now I do kind of care about and I'm paying attention to actively based on his performances, and that's Oho. Up until this year, I've been completely ignoring him. Anytime he pops up, it's like, oh yeah, this guy. I'm gonna go. Like, if I'm not watching the show with Goose, I'm getting a cup of water. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm just not a big Oho guy. And then he starts showing up. He gets a Kimboshi over Terunofuji, and whatever. How well Terunofuji did that tournament, whatever. The double 9-6 getting up to M1, never expected it from Oho, and having it happen, I was like, okay, I like it. We said it on the show, Goose. We like Oho now, so I'm giving
He is
I'm
confusingly
giving it to
good.
Oho.
He's kind of
Oh,
like a
and
Blossom
the
in Shodai, where it's like he'll lose, and it's like I don't understand. And then like he'll beat
and
Ozeki, and it's like, is this guy good or not? I can't figure it out.
I was just gonna say, and the problem he seems to represent to Hoshoryu too, which up until this last tournament was a real problem for Hoshoryu.
Fair enough. All right, now I did forget this one, so we're gonna chuck it into the end because I can't read my own writing apparently. But I feel like it works as a closer. Personal favorite moment. Just something that got overlooked that you feel like needs to get mentioned. Rick.
My personal favorite is Aonishiki's debut in Juryo because I just have to be a contrarian, I guess, and not talk about anyone pays attention to. But like, okay, so we joked about Shishi, right? And Shishi has a body, and there's nothing like Shishi's a Juryo wrestler. That's all there is. But Aonishiki is the truth, man, and his story is so cool. This idea that like he met this college Japanese sumo wrestler at a tournament when they were both like 16 or something like that. The war in Ukraine breaks out, and he like this was his way out, right? Like he pushed for it. He had this friend who helped him get into Japan, get into a stable, and he's leading his stable. It's a small stable. They took this chance on him, and not only did they take a chance on him, and it's paying off. It's paying off quickly. He's tied for the 5th fastest run into Seki Tori in history. He opened up with 7-0 Jonokuchi, 7-0 Jonidan, and then 4 straight 6-1s to make his way into Juryo to open up his career. And so we never know with these guys. I was riding so high on Ochiai Hakuoho, who then I don't think he's the same after the shoulder injury, and I don't know that he's ever going to be. It's one of the reasons why Ono Sato is so impressive is because he kept it up. We talked about worries about Takeru Fuji. Like, it's one thing to show up and another thing to stay there. But as far as showing up, Aonishiki did it the hard way, coming up from the bottom, coming to Japan, not knowing the language, just like having only sumo, and to see that pay off is like really inspiring to me. And so I really hope that we see a lot of Makuuchi from him next year, and that we see him maybe being the leader of this next generation, as the previous generation of European Rikishi is gone now, right? Like, Aoyama
Yeah.
was the last man flying the flag, and now it's Aonishiki.
He did have a very telling final match on day 15.
Yeah.
Like he's absolutely phenomenal, and I enjoy watching him. Watching Kim Bozan maul him though, who kind of struggles at the M10 rank. I was like, okay, we kind of have a gauge of his ceiling. Obviously, he can overcome it with training, but for where he is right now, he's gonna have to fight in Makuuchi, and I'm looking forward to him overcoming that. I think he can.
And I love that you brought that, because the interesting thing about Kim Bozan, right? I see Kim Bozan, because of quotes from his own coach, as like a disappointment, because, you know, the idea in sports, you can't coach size, right? Kim Bozan has all the gifts, but his coach complains about he doesn't have the motivation. He's not trying. He's not taking advantage of these gifts. Whereas Aonishiki is an undersized guy, and he fights Oshizumo, right? Like, he's not out there trying to throw guys like Midori Fuji or even Hoshoryu back in the day. He just tries to go straight through you. He buries his face in your chest and tries to push you out. So I think it's interesting, Goose. Like, if he does overcome it, like you said, he has picked the hardest way to do it. So if he does it, that's really impressive.
It'll be beautiful. Spiffy.
So I want to touch on Hakuoho real quick, because I get what you're saying, and I'm sure a lot of us who have kind of watched his rise and fall and rise again would agree that he does not look as nearly as dominant in how he fights as he did before. But this is still a guy who, in his less dominant form, just got 11 and 10 wins in 2 of his last 3 tournaments. Also, as someone who has had a similar shoulder injury, I'm telling you, it takes 2 years to be real, to have that shoulder really function the way it's supposed to. And that's rehabbing it like correctly as just a citizen, not putting it under the stresses of sumo. Now, the fact he's putting it under those stresses means that it might end up not recovering quite the way it should, and he may not be the same again. But I think we should expect him to succeed in the top division now that he's back. And whether that means he's going to hover around, Maegashira 345, or whether he's going to pop into the Sanyaku, he does not look like a guy who's on the fast track to Yokozuna anymore. And that's going to take time to get back to, if he gets back there at all. But he's going to get up there. I don't think there's any question of that. Anyway, personal, Goose, you said overlooked, and this definitely wasn't that. But Ura at Komusubi, come on now.
Yeah.
Pinky is the truth. The pink is the truth, man. Like, he got his ass beat sideways the whole tournament until he could get away from those other Sanyaku dudes who he just is not much of a match for most of the time. But then from 2-9, he finishes it off with 4 straight wins, and he puts on his halo and wrecks the Devil Ryuden at the end of the tournament. Not to mention, and yes, this goes back to 2023, but he clinched the spot by throwing Hokuseiho on his face out of the ring. Come on now. There's nothing better than that.
You reminded me of something beautiful. You're absolutely correct in what you say about just personal favorite, because that is just the Ura moment being undefinable but instantly recognizable. Him standing on the dojo with everyone else in the Sanyaku and being completely hidden by Shodai in front of him, so that in his one shining moment you couldn't even see him, is maybe my favorite Ura moment.
Just knowing his view is even worse than ours.
I've never seen such a 16-year-old looking 31-year-old in my life, and I love him for it. I gotta give it to everyone's outstanding performance, apparently, whatever it was. I had a joke. Anyway, I gotta give it to what everyone else already voted on. Takanosho's Jun Yusho.
Mm.
This dude decided he wanted to win again, and is now an actual Yusho threat. Like, there's been 2 Basho where people have to worry about this guy again. And he used to be a Sakewake. We've seen it with Hokuto Fuji and Takara Fuji and a lot of these like former guys that almost were something, and then just kind of fallen off. Takanosho is back to that. And because he was like the king of just kind of here to me. Like, he was just kind of floating around. You never really worried when he was up against your guy. And now you do. And to get it off a Kimboshi against specifically a Teru who saw day 15 matters. And that is just... I like to see a comeback like that, you know?
I hope he can keep the momentum. Yeah.
Well, if he could just start every tournament at Maegashira 6, he'd be fine.
True.
Remember, Arby's Yusho started at M9, just quietly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
JJ.
My personal favorite moment is one that it happened on stream. It was the lead up into Ichi Yamamoto versus Wakataka Kage. And I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if Ichi beat him? And then he did. And the look on Goose's face was just stone and disappointment. And for very personal reasons, that was my favorite moment of the year. Probably the one that got me the most hype, though, was Hoshoryu just baby lifting Kirishima and dealing with him in a half a second. The Ichi Wakataka Kage one is up there for me.
That hurt me specifically because that was the first time my favorite wrestler versus JJ's favorite wrestler, and my favorite wrestler was clearly the better guy and lost. That hurt my heart. So now the head-to-head is 1-1 as well, which should keep things exciting.
Yes.
May stay 1-1 for a long time, because the Bonskes may diverge for those 2 men.
It's possible, but he's looking pretty competitive. That's it for awards, unless anyone has anything else to add before we go to the prizes for our Wrestler of the Year. On one point...
I was disappointed, Goose, that one of our categories was not Yorikiri Gorilla of the Year.
Onosato, the
Just
king of
who-
Ooga Booga Sumo. All right. On 1 point, Ura Hakuoho, Aonishiki, Oho, Tobizaru. That was you, Spiffy. Churna Umi, Daisho, Kodozakura for some reason on only 1 point. No one likes this guy apparently. On 2 points, Abi, Wakataka Kage, Kirishima, Ichi Yamamoto, and Terunofuji also on 2 points. Despite only being here for 2 Basho, still pretty impressive. On 4 points, Hirata Umi. On 5 points, Onosato. Also on 5 points, Hoshoryu. And then our Wrestler of the Year, with 12 votes, more than double, is Takarafuji. No surprises. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Honorable mention for the surprise bit that Spiffy pulled out, least impressive debut of the year, Shishi on -4.
I mean, the level of blowout there is maybe a surprise for a guy who got dropped right back into Juryo because of his injuries, but still fair.
What an impression.
The
Yeah.
samurai has returned. Well, that's going to be it from us. I'd like to thank you gentlemen for jumping on. It's been lovely. We have Kimboshi, Rick, links in the description, and Sumo Spiffy, links in the description. If you enjoyed him there, you're going to love him over there. If you enjoyed him here, whatever. All right.